If you want to know how to better prepare for graduate school and you want to hit the ground running, this video is for you. We're going to talk about grad school applications, the expectations that you might have, skills you do learn and you don't learn in graduate school. And so this is really for you to prepare yourself better. Hello, my name is Julia, and let's dive right into it. So let's talk about grad school applications. A little disclaimer here, I'm actually not the best person to talk about this for two reasons. First of all, it's been very long since I've done that. And secondly, my story is a little bit different from most people's story. I come from Germany. I did my undergrad in Germany. I applied for one graduate school simply because I knew the professor beforehand. I knew him from Germany. I came over here, looked at the school, the program, and everything, and I only applied to one particular program, which was really the ideal fit. The professor had just started his lab less than a year ago. He was very interested in hiring me as a graduate student, and I also already knew that I wanted to join his lab. From this perspective, it was really very different from like how most people experience getting into graduate school, applying for it, finding a lab, and so on and so forth. This is also because I did research in my master's. So I did 1 year of research in my master's program, like a full year of research, and which really was a very good fit with the lab that I actually ended up joining in graduate school. I was split 50-50 between a computational lab and an experimental lab. I really started with my research from the very beginning, and the rotations for me were really more or less a formality. In any case, if you start graduate school, you want to know why you're doing this. You want to know why you want to go to grad school. What do you want to get out of it? Are you sure that you want to spend X many years, let's say in the US, it's more like 5 or 6 years in a program that is not very easy. And obviously this depends on the subject area. You also have to weigh the financials. Again, I don't regret it at all, but you have to know, why do you want to do this? In my case specifically, I loved research and I wanted to spend some time in the United States. I wanted to come here for a few years and I wanted to dig deeper into the research that I've been doing. So that was the reason why I wanted to do this in the first place. Once you're sure that you want to go to grad school, look at different universities, look at different programs. Look at the requirements that the program has. Look at the departments. Look at the different labs in the departments that you're interested in. So really get more of a full picture of the places that you're applying to really see whether you can see yourself in this environment. Can you see yourself working with these people? Do you find the city, the university, the department, the labs exciting? Talk to people, talk to anybody in those departments and see whether you can see yourself there. I highly recommend to apply to 5 to 10 graduate schools, depending on how competitive the programs or universities that you want to get into. Let's say if your grades in undergrad are okay, but you want to go to the Ivy League colleges like Harvard and Stanford, then 5 schools might not be your best choice simply because you will have a very hard time getting into it. I know for a fact that also due to the pandemic, one of the programs at MIT, they had 400 applicants for 8 spots. So these top programs are incredibly competitive. And unless you're absolutely outstanding and stellar, you will not get into them. And especially if you're only applying to 5 schools. If you're getting really good grades and you're an outstanding student and you're applying to a school that is a little bit more local, but that has like a good rating, you might be totally fine with applying to 5 schools in your local area because maybe you want to stay close to your family. You have to see what fits best for you, but I encourage you to not just apply to the top schools simply because unless you are an outstanding student, it will be very difficult for you to get into it. You also need to look at the types of colleges or universities that you're applying to. Once you know the types of schools you want to get into, again, you need to research the universities, you need to research the professors, you need to look at the application requirements. Applying for grad school is not a piece of cake. There's a lot of things you need to consider in your application materials. It's not just you write a page about yourself and that's it. It's really a lengthy process. And so I encourage you to start months before that to figure out what you need, to figure out how you can accomplish that, how you can put together your application. Then after you send in the applications and they have invited you for an interview, there's going to be an on-campus interview. This will take usually a day or 2 days. You will have the opportunity to meet with a few professors. You will have the opportunity to talk to other graduate students. And so really take that opportunity for you to not just try to impress anybody, but also see yourself in this environment working with these people. And then in terms of the graduate school application process from the department side, so how does this work from the other side? How does this work from the department side? And so I just want to give you a little bit of an idea simply because I think it makes a lot more sense if you think about it this way. The department comes up with a number of spots that they want to provide for graduate students. Let's say a chemistry department wants to hire 25 graduate students in that particular year. And they don't just come up with that number, but they also talk to the professors in that department, seeing how many graduate students can you take this year? How many graduate students can you take that year? And so they come up with a number, and depending on how many students apply as a graduate student in this department, they will need to go through the application materials and they will need to figure out who are their top choices. So again, they invite a few more people than that. And then during that on-campus interview, if you have any preferences for types of labs that you want to join and professors that you want to meet with, they might already get like a first idea of this student might join that lab and this student might join that lab, right? So in some programs, they have rotations, which basically means for about 2 or 3 months, you will join a lab, you will work in a really short-term research project, and you will see whether you can work in this environment, see whether you can work in this lab, see whether you can work with this PI. In my case, I think there were 3 rotations. There's multiple rotations that you can take to just test drive different labs, and then you can make a choice which lab you want to join. But again, this really depends a little bit on which lab you can see yourself in, but also which student the professor wants to hire. It really goes a little bit both ways, but once you understand that, the faster you can make a choice on which lab you want to join, and even maybe already having an idea during the interview process, I think it will make it a lot easier to get into the actual program, because if you are an ideal fit for a specific lab, and both you and the professor agree that this is the case, then the professor can push for admitting you into the graduate program at that specific department because you'd be an ideal fit for their lab. And so they would vouch for you. And so this is exactly what happened in my case, because we both knew that I would be a perfect fit for the lab and the professor wanted me. He could basically say, yes, I want to take that student, and to the department, I want you to make that student an offer. I just wanted to give you a little bit of that story from the department side so that you know how this works. There's a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to placements of students, simply because people might take rotations, also how much funding is available, and so on and so forth. So it's not like ideal, but that's usually how it works. So now let's talk about some of the expectations that you might have about graduate school. There's 2 things here. You need to think about what your expectations are and do they match with reality. And the first one is about, let's say, workload and how a graduate program is set up. When I was an undergrad, when I did my master's and I was about to decide whether I wanted to go to graduate school or not, I wasn't entirely sure. And one of my friends had mentioned to me is, oh, going to grad school is basically just like getting a job. You're just going to work for a few years, and then after those years, you have a title. And now looking back at that, he could not have been any more wrong. And that's simply because a graduate program is really nothing that comes very easy to most people. It's really a lot of studying. A lot of the workload is really not easy. And you want to do a good job, and you're not just doing a PhD for the fun of it. And even though you will hopefully choose a program and a lab that you enjoy being in, because if it's not fun for you and you have to spend 5 years doing this, then you're going to be miserable by the end of that time. Looking back at my experience, I love graduate school. It was really tough at times, and we worked like really long hours. But I learned so much. I grew as a scientist. I loved my projects. I loved working in my labs with my PIs. And again, it was not a walk in the park, but these are all things that you need to consider. Do I regret any of it? Absolutely not. I think grad school for me was a really valuable and really fun experience. That's not to say that I didn't have time that I wanted to quit. On the other hand, would I have done anything differently? Absolutely. If I would have known how graduate school really is, I would have done so many things very differently. Many videos here in this channel talk about my experience in graduate school, how things are in graduate school, what types of things you need to consider, what types of skills you need to build, how you can manage yourself, productivity, time management, and all of those things. So if you want to save yourself the time and headache, I highly recommend you subscribing to this channel, because you will learn a lot from it. The second thing about the expectations in graduate schools are the skills that you will or will not be learning in grad school. Obviously, you're becoming a scientist. You will learn the technical skills to do that. This is really the first thing that you're usually thinking about. It's, oh, I'm going to learn all of these cool things. Oh, you're working in the wet lab and pipetting and all of these techniques, right? And obviously also reading the literature in your area of expertise. But there's also a whole bunch of things that you're not thinking about. You're not thinking that you need those skills. And some of those skills you learn in graduate school, and a lot of them you don't. And a lot of them you're actually expected to pick them up on your own. So nobody will sit you down and tell you, oh, I'm going to teach you about time management today, because that's just something that's expected of you. So again, the scientific skills you will definitely learn, absolutely. Then there are other, they're not exactly soft skills, but they're also not scientific skills per se. And these are communication skills. And what I'm talking about here is how to read papers, how to write papers, how to give a presentation, how to make a poster. Like, these are to some degree hard skills, but at the same time, because they're scientific communication skills, they sound like soft skills. But here's the thing, these are all things that you can learn. There's a strategy behind it. It's not, oh, you're either good at it or you're not. No, you can learn them rather easily if you follow the right strategies. Again, there's science skills, there's scientific communication skills, and then there's other soft skills. And those other soft skills are things like goal setting, organization, motivation, prioritization, learning how to deal with procrastination, time management, how you actually set up a project for yourself to succeed, goal setting. How do you prioritize your projects? How do you stay motivated when things get tough? How do you overcome procrastination? How do you stay organized if you're reading all those hundreds of papers? How do you manage your time? All of these things are soft skills that usually nobody is sitting you down and teaching you specific things like this. How do you find your project at the beginning of grad school? How do you figure out what interests you? How do you figure out what is a good project for you? And so usually I recommend that you talk to people around you, you read a lot of literature, you figure out what interests you, and then you just dig deeper in this. And then over time, you will find what might be a good project for you. And I have more details in this in the Ultimate Grad School Survival Guide, which is linked below. And so you can find a link in the description. Other soft skills in grad school, you need to figure out how to be an adult. And this means all of the things that I just talked about, but also discipline. Nothing works without you being disciplined. If you feel like you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, or your dishes are piling up simply because you were too lazy to do them for the last 3 days, you have to kick yourself in the butt sometimes a little bit. And nothing in life is always rainbows and sunshine. So this is the time for you to learn how to be an adult, how to budget your money, how to cook for yourself, how to do laundry, how to take care of yourself, both physically as well as emotionally. You need to be proactive. Nobody is going to come and rescue you. This is really when your life starts. And the other thing is also, you have to know yourself. You have to become more emotionally mature. You will run into a lot of problems. A lot of things won't work out, and it might not be super motivating at some points, right? But you have to learn how to deal with it. You have to learn how to be okay with failure. You have to figure out how you learn. You have to figure out how to motivate yourself. And these are all things that you're going to learn in grad school along the way, or by actually being proactive about it, simply because you know that these are going to be skills that you will need. And so this is exactly what I wanted to tell you in this video. All of these skills are needed in grad school. The earlier that you know that, the better for you, simply because this is the time now to prepare for that. And networking, making friends, socializing, because making friends in grad school, this is your support system. They understand what you're going through. They can help you get through things. If you can, I highly encourage you to start graduate school early. I started graduate school in May. That meant I started before the summer, and I started with a summer research project. And so basically I had the entire summer to get used to a completely new environment, a new country, a new culture, new people, new lab, new research, everything. This really gave me the opportunity to get to know things around me, get into my own routine a little bit before classes started at the end of the summer. This was really valuable for me simply because I didn't come here and just started classes on the first day and that got completely overwhelmed with everything. So if you have the opportunity to do that, and take that time to get to know your environment a little bit, get to know the labs in the department a little bit more, I think is really helpful for you if you have that opportunity. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video.